You're listening to Let's Stay Together, a podcast about Fruits Basket by Natsuki Takaya. I'm Ellen.
And I'm Kayla.
And today we're discussing chapters 108 and 109.
Ooh.
Yay! We're going to do our summary discussion and spoiler discussion like we always do.
Ooh.
Yay. Again, after almost 100 episodes, we're not changing it up, shockingly. Chapter 108 opens exactly where we left off last time, so Tohru remembers her argument with Rin. If the curse doesn't break by next spring, then Kyo-kun will be gone, she thinks, and cries. And she leaves the dojo. Kunimitsu and Kyo take notice. Why did I run, she thinks. Maybe they'll discover how I really feel. Tohru remembers Rin asking what the most important thing is to her, and back then, she couldn't answer. I couldn't save my mom, she thinks. When she was about to answer, she suddenly thought of Akito telling her that Kyo would be confined. Tohru remembers the day that she had to leave the apartment she shared with her mom. She stands alone in the apartment, a scene we've seen before. I can feel it, she thought back then. Even though she was just here a little while ago, her presence is disappearing. Mom should have been sitting there smiling like she always did. It's fading away and vanishing into nothing. She was here. She was here. She was supposed to be here. Tohru-san, do you have all your things? Her grandfather asks her, and she says that's all of it. He puts her hand on her shoulder. Let's go, Kyoko-san, he says, and he smiles reassuringly. She looks over at him and begins to cry. From then on, I promised that Mom would be the one that I always cared about most, no matter what happened. I thought I needed to keep caring so she wouldn't fade away. Our memories, the promises we made. And Tohru remembers her mother saying, we'll always be together. And she remembers her mother, dead in the hospital. Tohru kneels beside the bed and cries. If I didn't believe that way, she thinks, it felt like I would lose everything, but... In the present, Shigure catches up with her on the road and takes her hand. He steers her back toward home rather than toward the main house, which is where she was heading. I had no idea you and Rin were trying to break the curse, he says. And now that the cat's out of the bag, Tohru can finally talk to Shigure. She asks him if he knew that the curse would break, and he didn't, of course, but had a feeling that the end was coming. Apparently this is the first time the entire Zodiac have been together like this. The maids were all pleased about it, but Shigure thinks it's the final banquet. The blood that ties the cursed has diluted over time. Kureno's curse is broken, and Hattori, bless him, is a seahorse. Those are my words, not Shigure's. See, I put jokes in this part. It's fine. To put it very childishly, Shigure says, Kureno isn't our friend anymore. He confirms all the things that Kureno told Tohru. His curse is broken. Akito is a girl. Kureno thinks the end is near too, Shigure says. Small changes and chances have accumulated over time, and Shigure remembers their phone call. Kureno asks, Nissan, did you get her involved because you wanted to create one too? When we originally read this part about the phone call, I didn't realize how much mileage it would get in the story. This is like the fourth time that we've seen it after.
Yeah.
Shigure tells Tohru, if you don't make a chance for Kyo-kun, he's going to get locked away. Tohru is shocked, and he explains that he knew about it. They all know about it, but they pretend not to. Why? Tohru asks, and his expression darkens. Because the cat has a duty to go. We're monsters, Tohru-kun, disgusting creatures. You couldn't possibly think that we're happy about what we are. Do you know how many handicaps we have? How much pain we have to go through to live within the framework of this world? To those of us in the Zodiac, the existence of the cat is salvation. We need him, Tohru-kun. He's a monster even uglier than we are. He's inferior to everything. It's a matter of course that he has to live locked up, discriminated against, and looked down on. Seeing him being treated that way makes the Zodiac feel better. Good, we think. At least I'm better off than him. Go ahead and ask the others. Ask if they know that he'll be confined. If they've always looked down on him in their hearts. They won't know what to say. The cat was prepared to be left out. And he knows it, by the way. Tohru cries and she yells and pushes his chest, just like she did to Akito. He holds her hands. Did it make you angry? He asks, and she shakes. She remembers Hattori telling her about how dark and cursed the Somas are. I wonder if I really understood what Hattori was talking about that day, she thinks. I don't understand. Not at all. The conflict, the suffering, the pain, I couldn't possibly touch it. Anyway, it's going to end someday, Shigure says. You said eventually isn't good enough. Tohru-kun, do you want to save Kyo? Do you love? Tohru looks panicked and she holds her hands to her face. Why? She thinks of her mom. But I promised so hard. The one that I always picture first in my heart. Her thoughts trail off and she thinks of Kyo. I can't, she thinks. She'll disappear. She'll go far away. Tohru has another memory of a man in a tie. His face is obscured. You make me sick, he says. And she wonders who it was that said that to her. In the present, Shigure says that he should apologize. And Kyo finds them on the street before Shigure can say anything more and threatens him, of course. Shigure explains that Tohru had a fight with Rin and he was lending her an ear. Tohru got in a fight? Kyo asks, and she's like, Shigure says that it's delicate and takes the gift that Tohru brought for Rin. I've told you what I can, he says to her. Don't push yourself too hard, but give it what you can. And then he bails. Before anyone can ask questions. And Kyo is like, what host club did he wander out of? He tells her not to worry about the fight. A spat every once in a while is okay. You'll make up in no time, he says. Tohru looks up at him and blushes. He smiles reassuringly at her. She remembers her mother. Don't go, she thinks. Don't go. And she starts to cry. Kyo is like, yikes, was the fight that bad? And Tohru says, no. I just don't know what I should do. In times like this, Kyo says, you shouldn't do anything. If you think you have to do something, then do it, I guess. And, just cry when you have to. He pats her head. We see Shigure running into Hattori, trying to sneak in and bring Rin the gift. And then the chapter closes on Kyo and Tohru together. Tohru cries. I'm sorry, she thinks. Just for a little longer, I want you to be here. I'll have to do something when the time comes, but maybe I'll know by then. Maybe then I'll know what I have to let go of. And that's the end of chapter 108.
Yay.
Yay. Yay. I love Shigure just being like, yeah, I'm just gonna lie my way out of this one. Shigure out. In chapter 109, it's the anniversary of Kyoko's death. Kyo goes to visit her grave alone this year. I can't be brave enough to stand in front of that grave surrounded by those people. Not anymore, he thinks, and he remembers Hana asking him at the grave before, why are you standing before a grave with such feelings of regret? He turns to leave the cemetery. It's been a while since he visited his own mother's grave, he thinks, and he remembers going with Shisho. In the memory, baby Kyo clings to Shisho's leg. Shisho encourages him to burn some incense for his mother. Kyo's asshole father asks, well, you can't get close because you feel guilty, don't you? And Shisho sasses him back like a badass. That isn't something you should say to a child. Kyo's father says that he's saying it because he's a child. I'm sure he doesn't understand me. I do understand, Kyo thinks. In the present, at the cemetery, Kyo runs into Grandpa Honda sitting on a bench, and Grandpa Honda recognizes him from when he dragged his granddaughter away by the forehead from the house. That's literally the memory that's shown. That wasn't an embellishment on my part. I just want everyone to know. Thank you for being kind to Kyoko-san, he says to Kyo, who frowns. Oh, I'm sorry, I mean Tohru-san. Thank you for being kind to Tohru-san, he says. Kyo asks what he's doing at the cemetery, and he says that his back is acting up, and he called for a ride home. And it says, so cell phones really are convenient. And I never wrote a note that says, so even Grandpa Honda has a cell phone, but, Tohru and Kyo don't have cell phones. Just saying. Listen. He comments on how kind Kyo is to visit Kyoko's grave, and then asks how Kyoko, or Tohru, is doing. Kyo asks about him calling her Kyoko. Isn't that kind of harsh? He says. I suppose it is, Grandpa Honda says. Listen, son, I wanted to tie them together. I wanted to prove that Kyoko-san did exist. I was afraid that if I didn't confirm that poor girl would fall apart. Kyo clenches his fist. Grandpa Honda says it's not the only reason. It was for him, too. He was lonely. Everyone in his life leaves him behind. I wanted to tie them together somehow, he says, remembering Katsuya and Kyoko. Grandpa Honda asks if Kyo knows why Tohru talks the way she does. Some asshole relatives at the funeral, at Katsuya's funeral, said that she didn't look like him. A girl like that is no consolation. Things like that. Grandpa Honda supposes that they thought that a child wouldn't understand, but that's nonsense. Of course children can understand what adults say. At the very least, they know if a comment is kind or malicious, and Kyo remembers his own father being an asshole. Back at home, Kyo finds Tohru outside hanging laundry, and he remembers the rest of what Tohru's grandfather said to him. It bothered Tohru-san, of course it would, and Kyoko-san was so emaciated that anyone could tell by looking at her. There's no reason a child wouldn't be troubled. Grandpa Honda remembers visiting baby Tohru after her father's death, the same time that we saw before in Kyoko's memory when we looked at her backstory earlier. I can't remember what chapter it was. I forgot to check. My bad, but that's fine. Baby Tohru says to her grandfather, Daddy went somewhere far away, didn't he? Will Mommy go there too? Is Dad calling to her? She's been sad for a long time now. She won't talk to me. Is she sad because I don't look like Dad? What can I do to be like him? Will Mom get better if I just act like him? Will she stay here? Grandpa Honda tells Kyo, in the present, that there was a time when Kyoko left the house for a long time. Kyo remembers speaking to Kyoko as a child. It's been since then, like Katsuya, and then Kyoko trails off in his memory. I think that I did something to make her sad, but Tohru was still there for me. She's here to support me. Maybe the world doesn't need me, but there's still one person kind enough to need me. I only need that to live. In the present, Kyo watches Tohru hanging up the laundry. It's not like she made it this far surrounded by only good things, he thinks. There was a time that Kyoko asked Kyo to check on Tohru while she worked an overnight shift when they were children. It was weird, he narrates, thinking back on it. Tohru being all alone as a kid reminded me a lot of how she is now. She looks so lonely. Tohru finally notices him and startles. They make small talk a little, and then Kyo asks about her father. What did he look like? And Tohru looks panicked as she hangs up a sheet to dry. You said before that you don't remember him well, Kyo says, but do you look like him? She mumbles. Our faces don't... Oh, but I've heard that the way we talk is similar. Even Mom said that we used to talk the same way, she says with a smile. I guess you were pretty happy to hear that, he says, and Tohru looks down. It's It's not true. Actually, we're not alike at all, she says. That's why I talk the way I do. She grips the sheet. The truth is, I thought that my dad was a bad man. I do remember him. It's vague, but I remember that he was kind and I can recall the things he gave me. But still, I thought that he might take Mom away from me, so I wanted to get her attention. I wanted her to stay with me. I wanted to tie us together. I didn't want to be left behind. I wanted to be able to stay calm, and I would have done anything for that. It was simple for me to just treat my father like a bad man. Tohru cries. If it was for myself, I would have broken any promise. I'm such a terrible person. But that's just stupid, Kyo thinks. Let me guess, she filled up her head with ideas. She didn't want her mom to leave her behind, so she chased after the traces of her father left in her memory and made her own answer. It was probably a little weird and a little silly, but she kept it up anyway. We see baby Tohru in her mom's absence looking at the mirror, a memory of her father and practicing the words she would eventually say when her mother returned. Welcome home. The way that she looked as she hid her loneliness, Kyo thinks, as she tears herself apart with blame, it makes her look so foolish and so deserving of love. Kyo takes hold of her shoulders, the sheet a barrier between them that keeps him from transforming. I'm sure your mom knew, he says as she cries, but you supported her. I know you did. Did I really? She asks. Really, he says. You have to believe that. Oh, I'm sorry, I was suddenly talking like I'm depressed, she says. It's okay, he says. It's really okay. Talk as much as you want. It's not going to disillusion me or anything. And then they hug through the sheet. Sheet hug. We've only waited 109 chapters. I mean, we see more of Kyo's conversation at the graveyard with Grandpa Honda, and he wonders why he's telling Kyo all of these things about Tohru. Oh, it just seemed like Tohru-san is very precious to you, he says, and Kyo blushes. He says Kyo should be getting along. I'm sure she's waiting for you to return, he says. I hope you take good care of her, because that girl's happiness is everyone's happiness, Grandpa Honda says. Back at home, Tohru hands Kyo a photo of her father. He takes it in his hand. So you did have a photo that's so like you, he says, and she smiles and blushes. Kyo thinks, when I muttered that he was wasting his time asking me about Tohru's grandfather, he just said, really, and smiled at me. His face seemed really disagreeable. It made me think just a little of Katsuya Honda. Then we close on Tohru's photo of her dad, Katsuya. That's the end of chapter 109. Yay! Yay, sheet hug!
Yeah. Like, it was sad, but we had a hug. So.
Yeah. A glorious hug. So much drama. I do remember seeing that for the first time, being like, oh my god! As a tiny high schooler, probably, at the time that this came out.
Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah, probably high schooler.
I also want to note, it's like on the filler for the next chapter, but there's a cute little sketch of like Kyo as a cat after the sheet hug anyway.
It says like they transformed anyway? Question mark. It's very cute. Mm-hmm. What a great chapters. Multiple chapters. The first part of this is a continuation from last time, but I wanted to talk about like Shigure's theories. All his theories about the curse, I guess. Which I guess would be classified as a change or like update to the curse, but basically like his theory is that this is the final banquet because this is the first time that in a long time, I guess, that all the Zodiac, like the full like 12 plus the cat plus God, I guess, have been around. Mm-hmm. And the maids are super excited about it. But he thinks it's to gather everyone for a final meeting. Mm-hmm. And his other evidence is Kureno's curse is broken and also Hattori is a seahorse.
Yeah.
Or like that the Zodiac forms. I think we had a long discussion a long time ago. I can't remember if it was in spoilers or whatever about the actual like shape of the animals and how we were like kind of like they're presented as kind of like chibi, potentially for merch purposes. But also I don't know if this is supposed to allude to because they're cute, you know, like Snakey Yame is a noodle with a head. We've talked about this.
Yeah.
But it's like you could like draw them in a way that's more realistic. You could make that choice. So I always wondered if this like theory that Shigure is saying is actually like, supposed to be not like a justification for that, but like explaining that that's how they're intended to look. Like not that they look cartoonish, but they don't seem to look super realistic when they transform, I guess. I don't know. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've also talked about like Kagura's boar form is like a baby boar.
Oh yeah, we
know
talked
she's
about
an adult and stuff like that.
Yeah. They have the stripes. Most important thing.
Yeah. Stripey babies.
Stripey baby. It's how they blend in, I guess.
Yeah.
If she was a giant, like, adult-sized boar, that would be terrifying.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway. And then, like, I don't know. It's hard to tell with the other animals because they do seem to be sort of, like, baby-sized until they're it's like they're a baby animal when they're a baby like human, I guess. So
Yeah.
yeah. So like with, for example, like with Kisa and Hiro, it's like, okay, so they're clearly like a lamb and like a tiger cub, but like doesn't seem like it'll be that way forever, you know. So
Yeah.
Haru's a cow with hair. How realistic is that? I
Yeah.
mean,
I think there is something to say like he looks like a dairy cow rather than like an ox.
that's right. Yeah, we did talk about that before. And then we had
Yeah.
that amazing note about different kinds of cows, and we learned about cows.
Yeah.
I remember. Shigure is implying that all those things kind of adding up together are evidence of the curse getting weaker, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
He said a bunch of things in this, like basically his lecture to Tohru
Yeah.
while
Mm-hmm.
she was upset.
I also think it's interesting that it seems like we get a bit of like from Shigure's point of view of like kind of how Kureno like kind of agrees
Mm-hmm.
that the curse is weakening. His evidence seems to be that like the people are changing because he has like
Yeah.
we see a memory of him like watching
Yuki.
Yuki like sass back Akito back at the
Yeah.
last New
New
Year's.
Year's? Yeah. People making chances.
Yeah.
I like how so Kureno describes it as like changes and chances that are piling up,
Mm-hmm.
and that kind of leads into Shigure saying that Tohru needs to create a chance for Kyo or whatever,
Yeah.
however he describes it. So I think it's also interesting that Shigure. So we had this like the maid sass Kureno about them all being. It's like if it wasn't for Akito, you'd all be wretched monsters like the cat. And Shigure says to Tohru, "We're all monsters. We know we're cursed and whatever." So Shigure has like this. I'm not gonna call it a hot take, but his take on the curse is very negative, especially at this point
Mm-hmm.
in the story. So I don't think anybody. I mean, we've talked about it a lot. I don't think anybody ever, said anything like particularly positive about the curse. But Shigure is like, Toru, let me tell you how it is.
Mm-hmm.
We're monsters. Everything sucks, but it's okay because it's gonna be over soon.
Yeah.
Then he questions her about her feelings for Kyo, and then we spin into the Toru focused part of the chapter.
Yeah.
This is like, I feel like finally kind of revealing the depth of her issues about her mom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've seen a lot of this like foreshadowed up to this point. Like,
We talked about it many times in
Yeah.
spoiler talk, where something that's presented as her, I don't even know if you would, I don't know how you would describe it. I was about to say like devotion, but that's not really the right word. Her like, the way that she acts about her mom and talks about her all the time, it's kind of like mama's girl kind of attitude. And then also the way that she's, I mean, I think we see it more in the next chapter, but the way that she's so presented as being super like independent and self-sufficient, and how that you could, it's almost like been presented, her character has been presented that way earlier in the series, but now Kyo through Kyo's kind of eyes and perspective, we see that it's really deep down she's very lonely, even though she's like putting on this face, been putting on this kind of like face for her whole life actually.
Yeah.
So as long as I guess after her father died at least.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's an interesting like flip on Toru's character. This is the part that people are always like, she's so like happy-go-lucky and all this other stuff in the beginning of the series. And this is like where I feel like we've seen it building up to now, but this is the final like flip on that, I think.
I think this is where we like get the like kind of explicit like breakdown of like, no, here's what was really going on.
I actually thought
in all
this.
that time. Yeah. And yeah, we've seen like stuff leading up to this, like her little like breakdown in the middle of the night at the beach, and like more recently her like not knowing what to say when Rin asked her that question.
We talked last time, I'm sure, about how she's kind of finally admitting to herself the way that she feels about Kyo. But I think that in this chapter she explained why that's a problem, right? Where she had made all these
like why
promises
she's
to her
been
mom.
so kind of like in denial of it.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because we talked about her being like, oh, he like makes me feel things. Like, what could it be?
Yeah, why do I feel this way when he bonks my head?
Yeah.
Like, because you're in love. But yeah, her denial all makes sense now because she's been focused on this way that she promised to like keep her mother's memory alive, which was to have her always be number one in her heart.
Yeah, and I think we could argue like after these chapters that like she was aware that she was falling in love with Kyo.
Oh, yeah.
And was just like desperately pushing it away rather than like genuinely being like, oh, I don't know what this feeling is.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, for sure. Yeah.
She's like, I know what this feeling is, and I'm not allowed to feel it. So
I don't want to feel it.
Yeah.
I've decided that I can't have this ever.
Yeah.
But the other interesting thing is, like, you have... So then when she's talking to Shigure in the first chapter that we read, she is like, I can't feel this way. Mm-hmm. And then in the next chapter, when she talks to Kyo, she's like, I would break any promise for myself. So, like, it's kind of a weird thing to say to him out of context. It's kind of like that thing that you said that she does all the time, where she has all these, like, internal thoughts, and then she'll say, like, one thing. Normally it's funny, but in this case, I think it's alluding to, like, the thing that she was thinking about when she talked to Shigure. It has nothing to do with, like, nothing per se to do with what she's talking to Kyo about.
Yeah.
It's more to do with him than it is to do with her feelings about her father. So, an interesting little drop in the dialogue, I thought.
Yeah. And I like how at the end, we basically get her saying, like I'm just gonna kind of like put this off for now, because I just want to like spend time with you for now, kind of thing. Yeah. And I'll make that decision later, which is really similar to, yeah. Well, it's really similar to Kyo's perspective, like that we've seen before, where he's just like, I don't know what's gonna happen in the future, but I just want to be around you right now.
Like, same problem, same person. Yeah, meant to be together, obviously.
Yeah.
It's interesting how all these characters are just like, I'm just not gonna deal with this feeling right now.
Yeah.
Which is somehow legit.
That's a problem for future Tohru.
Yeah. Problems for future Yuki, future Kyo, and future Tohru at this point. There was just a lot of like dialogue in these two chapters where it's like Shigure revealing confirming all these things that she knows again, so now they know that the other one knows, because for a long time last time we were like, ooh, and then Shigure knows and Rin knows, and it's interesting we all have this conversation. Well, now they're all on the same page. Yeah. Everybody except for Kyo and Yuki. I mean...
That's fine. Kind of funny at the beginning with Shigure where he's like, oh, I didn't know all this was happening. That's cool.
He's like, I wanted to be in control of this, but, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
Like how she pushed Shigure. That was great. I mean...
Yeah.
I enjoyed Kyo's completely out of context advice of just being like... Yeah. He's like, yeah, well, if you feel like you need to do something, then do it, but... yeah, you don't have to do anything. Oh, you're trying. That's sweet.
Yeah. Like, I don't know how to deal with this. Yeah, I think it's kind of funny where Shigure, like, makes up his thing so he can, like, escape, but he's like, oh, she had a fight with Rin. He's like, well, he's not wrong.
No, none of it was wrong.
Yeah.
And he was like,
it's not exactly alive.
No. There was just way more to what happened. I love how Kyo was like, a fight? Like, so good. Yeah. We talked about how she's getting more fighty, though, so I do think it's true.
And just in general, I think more willing to express her own emotions rather than, like, holding back for, like, everyone else's sake. Like, even in, like the fight in the last chapter, and then, like, here, her, like, shoving Shigure away, and then just even, like, her, like, confession of, like, how she felt about her father to Kyo, like, that's... You know, she doesn't usually, like, dump that kind of, like, emotional reveal on people. Like, we see her, like, internal thoughts about him sometimes, but...
I think that's also part of her growth as a character, too, is to... They've been telling her since the beginning, like, to worry about herself more, and it's okay to talk about your feelings and all these other things, which are all obviously true.
Yeah, like, be more selfish, and it's okay to cry and all that stuff, like, especially from Kyo, we've seen. So
Kyo!
It makes sense that she would be not as hesitant as usual to... do the feelings dump on Kyo since he's like told her to do it in the past.
I like how he explicitly like triggers it where he's like, so what'd your dad look like? Let me just ask you randomly with no pretense at all. And then she tells him the story, and then she's like, actually, I was really mad, which is completely all her feelings are legitimate, and then he's kind of like, this is dumb because it's legitimate. Like, it's okay to feel like that. It totally makes sense.
And we talked about it a bit in, like, spoilers during the Katsuya and Kyoko chapters about how, like, because she talks about how she's like, he wasn't a bad man. I remember him being very nice and stuff. And it's like, we were talking about how it's kind of sad that she, like, wound up with these, like, conflicted feelings since, like, we saw in the flashbacks that, you know, he would, like, absolutely adored her. And and they had a good connection when she was tiny.
Yes. He put on her baby jacket. It's interesting that we get to see the situation with Kyoko this is now from Toru's perspective and like Toru's grandpa's perspective. So
yeah,
we saw Kyoko's kind of perspective, and then she ran away and then came back, and then we saw what Toru was finally get to see what Toru was doing during that time, which I'm sure we talked about in spoilers before.
Yeah,
where she like looks at the mirror and is so sad. You can see her little dialogue where she's like practicing what she's gonna say when her mom comes back.
yeah.
It's like, my heart.
Yeah, that little like conversation she has with her grandpa is so sad.
I know.
But it's also sweet to see like her grandpa, how he's been looking after her all this time, even though he's had the like doddering old man, like act going on, but
he does kind of have that, yeah.
yeah. But we've seen like these chapter shows he's a lot sharper than he.
Yeah, he purposely calls her
Makes himself
Kyoko
out to be,
as
yeah.
opposed to not knowing who she is. Even the background characters have backstories in Furuba.
Yeah, that's like the ending with him with Kyo saying like he had a like disagreeable face when he smiled, and it reminded him of made him think of Katsuya.
Yeah, yeah, that's cute. He's so sassy about their potential relationship. Kyo's like, I don't know why. I can see, like, it's funny. Kyo doesn't. We don't actually see that. It's like Kyo narrating what happened, where he's like, I don't know why you asked me about that. I don't know why you're telling me. And he's like, oh, really? And then, like, that's the end of their conversation. So good.
We also got kind of I don't know if it comes up again later, but like kind of a culmination of that idea of like people saying shitty things in front of kids because they think they don't know what they're saying.
Yeah.
Which we've seen a couple times in the past, and like, but here it gets explicitly stated.
Yeah, and it's an experience that it turns out both Kyo and Tohru shared and didn't realize it.
Yeah.
So now Kyo knows.
Yeah, because we've seen it implied with the two of them in the past, and we've also seen it like from Haru and
Rin, I guess.
Rin, yeah, and stuff like that. Adults being shitty around kids.
Fucking adults.
Like, they don't understand. They're just kids.
Yeah. Adults are the worst. Everybody knows that.
And then good people like Cosmo being like, don't say shitty things in front of the kid.
And even like Toru's grandpa being like, yeah, no, that was really stupid. That was kind of fucked up. It was even...
Like how he calls them like worthless relatives.
Yeah, I called them asshole relatives in my narration, but yeah, he calls them worthless relatives. I loved how, remember in the funeral scene from Kyoko's memories, he was like sitting off to the side. It's the same, I think it's the same illustration, like, or like a similar one where he's wearing like the same kind of thing. So he was like sitting off to the side while the grown-ups were like talking to being assholes to Tohru. So like it's and again like another same sort of like incident memory that's from someone else's perspective. So that was kind of also a little small detail that I enjoyed.
Yeah.
Another important theme, of course, that we've seen a lot of times is people. So like you have Kyoko, or not Kyoko, wow. Toru's grandfather says, I wanted to tie them together by calling Tohru Kyoko. And then Tohru said the same thing about using her, speaking a certain way, like the way that Katsuya does, to tie her and her mother together. Where she's like, I wanted us to stay together. And I think this is a theme, I know that for sure we talked about it in spoilers, but I think it's something that's exemplified by both Tohru and Akito, of wanting things to stay the same. So Tohru wanted to keep this relationship with her mother sort of alive by keeping her number one in her heart and her memories. And then you have like Akito on the other side, in an unrelated way but similar situation, in that she wants everything to kind of stay the same and wants to keep the Junichi together. It seems to be her motivation to want to keep everything the same and keep everyone together. And when people go against that, that's when she gets angry and acts out against them and stuff like that.
Yeah. And the Spinkwood.
Yeah.
But yeah, we definitely talked about it because there's a semi-recent chapter where like we noted the fact that like they deliberately used the word bond to describe like Tohru and Kyoko's like relationship and like the Zodiac thing in like the same chapter.
Yes.
Because you're talking about like the idea of like bonds that can go sour and become a thing that like holds people back.
Yeah, you're right. We definitely talked about those specific things before, and I think this is just another thing that, again, adds on to that theme that's been building up for a long time. Yeah. So now that we finally have kind of like Toru's perspective, I think you can very strongly say that they're in a similar situation. Tohru and Akito, by they I mean Tohru and Akito, are in a similar situation, and that they, Tohru wanted something to be the same. She keeps this behavior going, I guess. I don't know. Is it behavior? Yeah. To keep things the same, and same with Akito.
Yeah, and even the way they react to like threats to that are kind of similar. Like obviously, like Akito gets angry, but like Toru is like freaking out like when it happens. And we've talked about how like Akito seems like genuinely like freaked out and like lost and doesn't know what to do when like there are like threats to her worldview.
Yeah.
Of her like, you know, endless banquet kind of thing. And so like we see Toru here, like she's like freaking out, doesn't know what to do when there's like a threat to her.
Yeah.
Well, like promise that she made.
Her own threat to her own self.
Yeah.
But like also they react with denial, both of them do. Like Akito at the beach house, I think, was the best kind of example I think we've seen of her denial of what's going on. I mean, it happens all the time, but in particular I feel like that was the strongest time because it's starting to she's starting to react more strongly, so with less denial and more, you know, like outrage. And then in Toru's case it's like less denial but just more like you know, fraudful, like panicking almost.
Yeah.
Like her expressions look very panicked, generally speaking.
Yeah. Like there's this, especially at the beginning in the conversation with Shigure when he like starts to ask her if she loves Kyo, she just looks like absolutely panicked. Like even Shigure looks a little surprised at the strength of her reaction there.
I mean, he basically stops talking to her. Like it transitions into her inner monologue at that point. So he kind of trails off.
Yeah, because we can see like her like immediate like awful panicked expression. We can see his like a little panel of his face looking kind of surprised, and then like he doesn't talk anymore, and it goes into her like freak out
until Kyo shows up and is like, "Hope you didn't do anything."
Yeah. So like he's like, "I don't think I deserve you glaring at me," and he's like, "I'm always glaring."
Yeah. I also loved. I didn't really include anything from it, but I loved when he goes back to Shisho's house and he like runs into Hattori and he's like, "Crap," and then Hattori's like, "You said crap." Like
yeah. Hattori's just like, "I'm so tired of you."
He's like, "Can you just like grow up or whatever? Like I'm tired of this."
It's been like, I can't remember how old they are, like 27 or something. It's like it's been like 27 years too much of you.
If you make fun of my seahorse form one more time.
Yeah. It's like, I know you did earlier in this chapter. I wasn't there, but I could tell.
I felt it. Yeah. Is there any other things you want to talk about that weren't spoilery?
Don't think so.
I don't think so either. I feel like things are revealed.
Yeah.
I guess we have some spoilers to talk about, though. I have things that I want to talk to you about. Yeah. Okay. Very good. Let's do that. So if you're not sticking around for spoilers, thank you, of course, for listening. And next time we'll talk about chapters 110 and 111. Yay. Okay, we'll see you then.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Spoilers time. Spoiler time? Let's talk about spoilers.
All right.
Do you want to go first? Bowie
wants to go first.
He has great timing for not being able to hear what I'm saying.
You're such a chicken. A couple of these are like spoilers, but they're going to be revealed in a couple chapters. So I guess that's like most things now.
Yeah. There's only like 20 chapters left. Am I crazy? There's got to be more than that.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I think it's in the 130s. So.
Because we got like the Kakeru Tohru connection.
Yes. Oh yeah, I called him an unidentified man because I was like, I can't call him a boy. That's too on the nose, and like you can't really tell. It's just a dude wearing a suit. So.
Yeah.
Right. That's coming. That's coming very soon. Isn't that like next chapter?
Yeah, I think that's
or maybe 2 or 3.
The end of this volume. So I think it's like the next episode for us.
Yeah.
I guess the big one is the use of the word disillusion.
I noticed that and noted it immediately. In all caps. And then I checked the if you're reading the translated or the other translation, the like special edition translation, you weren't treated to this glorious treat that's coming later. But also if you're just reading through this translation, then you probably aren't listening to the spoilers anyway, so I don't know who I'm talking to right now, but in the let me tell you what he said. He says, like, talk like that as much as you like. Let it out. You're not going to scare me off or anything. That's not right. Not right at all. It's interesting how on the... And also, like, I guess in the specific word that phrase he uses in Japanese, when you look it up in the dictionary, at least it just says disillusionment. So like disillusioned, it's very, which is super specific. So like, I don't know what the connotation of that word is or anything, but it's a very specific choice. And I didn't check the last volume or the volume where he says it again to confirm, but I mean, I think it's just a hyper-specific usage of that word, so it must be foreshadowing, intentional foreshadowing. But yeah, so yeah, if you have the new translation, then you missed out on a great foreshadowing. But yeah, he's like, oh yeah, I'm not gonna be disillusioned, and I was like, that's not right, that's not true. You are. You say that now, but it's not true. the most important foreshadowing of all, perhaps.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was a good time.
Yeah. I've always said disillusion is like a weird word.
It's such a strange word.
These situations, like I don't totally I get the context, but it's like I don't totally understand what.
I've thought about it so many times. Well, I'm sure we'll dive into it when we get to that part where it's like, what the fuck did he mean? He's like, oh, now I'm disillusioned. What does that even mean? Who would say that in a regular conversation? Like,
yeah.
I want to do some research on that specific phrase in Japanese and see if I can find something useful, because it's not like a word, at least in the dictionary that I used, it doesn't have like multiple meanings or anything, so it's not as like it doesn't seem to have multiple kind of like English variations like sometimes words do, like we talk about that sometimes. It seems to be super specific, but the specificity of disillusionment is so specific.
Yeah.
Like, disillusion as a word is like, so you were illusioned and now you're not illusioned? Like, I don't... Anyway. It's obvious that it's a rejection in that part of the story at the end, but it's not really obvious why he said it like that.
Yeah.
So.
I feel like I've reasoned it to him being like, he's disillusioned with himself and just like saying it badly. Because, like, it's obviously, like, his reasons for rejecting are all about his own, like, issues and feeling like he doesn't deserve it and everything.
So him saying, like, it's like, yeah, he feels he doesn't deserve it, but then saying, now I'm disillusioned, that means now...
Like, he's, like he had this whole, like, idea that they could just, like, go on...
Oh, being the same?
Like, without ever touching this or whatever, and just be the same, and it would be fine, and then he's like, oh, no.
Nope.
He's like, everything's terrible. I have to run.
And with that, I bid you adieu, and I'll never see you again.
Yeah.
I always kind of interpret it before. I mean, I'll have to think about it again when we read it again, but the way that I interpreted it before was like, or what maybe one interpretation of it is that he was somehow felt like it. I mean, he felt like if Tohru ever found out that he was there when her mother died, and then she would then reject him, but the opposite happens. So then he's like, oh wait, that's not what I expected. Now I'm disillusioned. Now I'm the one who, I don't know, like that's kind of the way that I interpreted it. It's also not a great way to describe it either. Like, I don't know, but
yeah,
they're all along the same lines. That's all about his hang-ups, which I think is definitely the case in that scene. But,
yeah.
Anyway, whatever. Something to dig into later.
Yeah, it could be that like he also like partially felt like that was his protection from having to deal with this. Where he's like, oh well, if she knows, it's never gonna happen. So
yeah, if she knows, I'll never have to deal with my own guilt.
Yeah, but then she's like, no, I still love you. And
he's like, shit.
Yeah.
It's kind of
similar. My whole worldview is shattered.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of similar to like what he tried to do when he transformed into his true form, where it was like, well, if she sees my true form, then she's definitely going to reject me forever. And then she was like, I want you to come back. And he was like, well, shit, now I have to accept this as part of me. So now it's the same thing where it's like, oh, now I have to accept that.
Yeah.
She doesn't care. Or like, not doesn't care, but that she's more willing to be with him regardless of the impact, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like it was his fault, but it feels like that. So. Everyone's problems in Furuba are always with themselves. It has nothing to do with other people. So they take things out on other people, but it never has anything to do with others. It's always internal.
Yeah. I was yelling at myself.
Yeah. I love Yuki for being self-aware enough to be able to say that.
Yeah.
It's like, well, I was arguing with myself, okay? Kyo was like, I don't understand what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Kyo's like, no, all of my problems are Yuki's fault.
I mean, he knows they're his fault. He's just like, the way I deal with them is pretending they're Yuki's fault.
Yeah.
Telling myself they're Yuki's fault.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, I'm disillusioned. I thought that all this was Yuki's fault.
Yeah. He's like that meme where he's like, how could Yuki do this?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. How could you fall in love with Yuki even though he was there when your mother died? Wait. Anyway. Oh, good. Well, we managed to have some jokes. That's good.
Can always bring the jokes.
Yeah, definitely.
Even when we shouldn't.
That's the most appropriate time to make jokes. Everybody knows that.
Yes.
The only other thing that I noticed that was spoiled is like that's coming up also shortly is like all the so Shigure is like just ask them about how they feel about the cat. Just ask them, and that's already come up a little bit. We talked about last time in that conversation with Haru and Yuki and Shisho, and then there's a scene later in this volume where Momiji starts bringing it up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's later in this volume. So
yeah,
so that's gonna happen.
The whole thing where they, the whole like
BBQ
pretended not to think about this kind of thing.
I feel like Shigure's take on this, I think, may be somewhat true, but I don't think it's entirely true. At least we haven't seen evidence of that. Like, nobody...
I feel like it's like we talked about this a bit. Like, I think it was true in the past with the cat.
I definitely think
but we talked about how, like people, like, the Zodiac in this generation, especially the younger ones, like they know Kyo as a person and hang out with him and mostly like him, so...
I feel like what he says may be true about, like, Hattori and Shigure and Ayame or whatever. Ayame definitely doesn't... I wouldn't say that Ayame looks down on... This is based on evidence of what we've seen, not what Shigure said. Ayame doesn't seem to look down on him. He just doesn't seem to really give a shit. He's just like...
I think Ayame looks down on everybody.
Yeah.
It's not, like,
not
Yuki and Hattori.
Yeah, exactly. Even Shigure, yeah. And Mine, yeah. Yeah, no, you're right. But, like, it's not like Haru doesn't look down on him. Like, he sees him as a, a formidable opponent and classify him as a borderline a friend.
Yeah, I think it's, like, the ones that, like, don't, like, interact with Kyo that often. I think, like, they mostly just don't think about it. And, like, maybe in, like, like, we all have those moments where we're like, well, at least it's not me, even though it's a terrible thing to think. Like, everyone does it. So, like...
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, it's called
so I can see, like, the ones that don't have, like, close interactions with him, like, mostly don't think about, like, the cat at all, and when they do, it's like, oh, well, at least I don't have to do that.
Yeah, or like, well, that's the way it's going to be, and it's not really in my control to change things or whatever. So. I wonder if Momiji thinking like that about Kyo and, like, questioning things, for example, is part of what helps his curse break sooner, maybe? Because Kureno's kind of theory and Shigure's kind of theory is that all the changes and the questioning of things and questioning the order of things going against, I guess, like Aikido or whatever, going against the bond is part of what helps break the curse.
Yeah, it's probably, I mean, like, the questioning and everything. And I think, like, for Momiji specifically, like, he's more independent and less, like, tied into a lot of the other stuff that the other Zodiac members are.
He doesn't seem to have a close relationship with Aikido of any kind, good or bad.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, like, they explicitly...
We talked about that.
Like, in the beach episode, explicitly, someone said, I can't remember who says it, but it's like, Aikido doesn't like you.
Yeah. Exactly. Which is, for the better or worse, we'll never know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't have any other spoilery things that I wanted to talk about this time. Did you?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. What's happening in 110 and 111? Let's find out.
I think Yuki goes to Ayame Mine's shop.
This is what we talked about last time, where you were like, and then the romantic tension causes Yuki to leave.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited. I skimmed ahead while I was reading. And
it literally is that. He's just like, hi, I have something to do today, bye.
Bye. It's like, suddenly I remembered. I'm getting out of here. It's cute. And then there's...
You're going out? Yep, very sorry. I'll be back before dinner.
Yeah,
and then he's gone.
The next one is Yuki and Machi, and the Komaki Kakeru Tohru connection is revealed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's only 136 chapters, so I was right about it being only 20-ish left, 25 after next episode. There'll be 25 chapters left. Mm-hmm. Oh my god! Soon we'll be able to talk about how disillusioned Kyo is.
Yes.
It'll be so exciting. So much drama. I talked recently about how I love it, hate it. You know.
Yeah, it's the good drama.
Delicious
here
drama.
At the end.
This is the shoujo we signed up for.
Yes.
I think those are all the things that were directly spoiled by this. So I think that's everything I wanted to talk about today.
Yeah.
Next time. So thank you all for listening again, and thanks for sending us messages and sending us support and buying us coffees. It's all very sweet, and hope everybody is staying safe during the quarantine, the great quarantine of 2020.
Yeah. You think that's how they'll put it in the history books?
I mean, probably.
It's definitely going to be in the history books.
Oh, 100%.
So.
Well, Spanish flu was, so it'll be like, they'll be like, and people wear masks, and then they complained about it, those assholes, and then everyone of the people in the future will look down on us.
Yeah. And then, like, you know, years from now, our, like, grandkids would be like, I have to do a paper for history and talk to someone who lived through the coronavirus.
Anyway, I think we didn't say goodbye yet, so.
No.
All right, thank you all for listening. We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Let's talk about not cats. Let's talk about Furuba.
Well, let's talk about a specific cat.
Yeah. I kept thinking to myself, like, the cat's room, put this in the cat's room. And I was like, that's not what I mean per se. Although they are isolated in there, but.
Yeah. Be locked away.
They have to, the reason they have the cat's room is just so that Kyo can get used to the main estate. I get it.
Yes.
You know, it's as quiet as the edge of the world. It has to be.
And then they'll, like, lift the door a little bit so he can...
They bring other people to the edge of the door and he sniffs at the door.
Yeah. Then they'll take the door off and put, like, a baby gate.
Toru's grandfather asks if she has all her things. Toru-san, do you have all your things? He asks. I think I edited that after. Toru remembers her mother saying, we'll always be together. I've collected myself. That's right. You tell her what's what.
I just looked back up at your notes and saw it. So.
Yeah. Toru's grandfather asked if she has her things. Toru-san, do you have all your things?
I don't know why that's so funny.
I don't know what's really funny. I think that I should just, like, deliberately make that a writing style. And just repeat the exact same thing over and over again. You're still laughing about it. You always laugh more at my mistakes than my jokes. How dare.